satellite images, and mainly Sentinel, that are freely available in theory, but in fact, the access and the pre-process raise lots of issues, maybe just due to the volume of data and the consumption of resources. We had lots of discussion within NIVA and sometimes also between NIVA and Sen4CAP, and one of the conclusions was that it was a complex issue that no one was fully understanding, and we had the idea maybe to provide some knowledge, trying to provide, I will not say that everyone is going to understand everything with the work we have done, but maybe to have some basis to go to this, towards this common understanding. So this was done in the context of a deliverable of the project that is called Recommendation for Standardized Connection between IX and Other Applications. So we decided to devote a big chapter of this deliverable on access to Earth observation data. The other big chapter being about exchange with FMIS system. So regarding the content about Earth observation data, we have tried to provide some basic knowledge about satellite images and pre-processes, and also capitalization of experience, either by the NIVA project itself, it may be by NIVA partners working at national level, and other experiences that we have got from presentation, conferences, and so on. So regarding the basic knowledge, we have a first chapter about what are the satellite images that can be used and what are their main characteristics, either optical or radar. And we have also a chapter about the pre-processes, the different levels of products, the temporal series, once again, making the difference between optical and radar. And to be honest, what is in this deliverable about optical is nice to have it, but more or less everyone knows it. And the main benefit is probably to make Sentinel-1 data a little bit less mysterious as it was at the beginning. I don't know for you, but for me, I have seen lots of presentation about Sentinel-1, about VV, VH, coherence and things like that without really understanding what it was about. So I hope our deliverable will make it a little bit more clear. We have tried also to explain what is the issue about the access to Earth observation data. Of course, the natural entry point will be the ESA hub, but in practice, it's not so easy. There are some difficulties. And also, there is a big difficulty that there is need to store and to computation power because of the big volume of data, as we are not working on a single image, but on a temporal series of images. We have tried also to provide an overview of possible solutions, such as alternative ways to get Sentinel images and the possible solution, such as DIAS or the clouds in-house. Regarding the feedback from experiences, I will just provide a few examples. The first example is a DIAS assessment that has been conducted by IGO, that is NIVA partner and was also involved in Sen4CAP. So they have made some assessment, and at the end we have chosen CREODIAS because the compatibility with Sen4CAP was among the main selection criteria for NIVA project. But the general assessment may be of interest for anyone, even if your decision may be different. We have also reported a few experiences regarding the installation of Sen4CAP. The experience was done by OPKP from Greece to support the decision support system. First, trying to do it with CREODIAS virtual machine and then with local installation. And from what I understood, maybe it was not so easy, but it was feasible, and they have appreciated very much the support of the Sen4CAP team. And we have tried also to do it in France by the paying agencies to get NDVI temporal series for our environmental indicators in NIVA, but it was a little bit complex, and we skipped quickly to another alternative solution that was enough to get just NDVI temporal series. We had not the requirement for all the outcome of Sen4CAP. A third example is a chapter about developing an OpenEO API. It's some kind of standard that specifies how to discover Earth observation, to build processing graphs, some list of jobs, and then to consume this service by running these graphs. And there are some OpenEO-based microservices that are developed by NIVA on top of Sen4CAP. The idea is that the paying in basic scenario, the paying agency is installing Sen4CAP, and the OpenEO is mainly used to avoid data file transfer, manual data file transfer, and it enables system-to-system data exchange. In a more ambitious scenario, someone, maybe IGOs, might be running Sen4CAP and providing the microservice and having this Sen4CAP markers or results, data as a service. But it's more ambitious, and it's not yet decided in NIVA. The last example that I will provide is about quality. We have tried to see all the factors that may influence the quality of Earth observation monitoring just regarding the input data. So there are two main factors: the temporal series, due to mainly to the cloud issues. So for instance, you can document the gaps. It's what we have done in NIVA, for instance, for the agro-environmental indicators. Computing them, whatever happens, but documenting if there are big gaps in observation due to clouds. It's possible to use markers coming both from Sentinel-2 and from Sentinel-1, as it is done by Sen4CAP. It's possible also to fill Sentinel-2 temporal series with Sentinel-1. We have some research going on in IGN. We have also considered all the issues due to the aggregation from pixel to parcels, what to do with the boundary pixels, should we have a minimum number of pixels, what about the parcel heterogeneity. For instance, we have here an illustration of a tool developed by NIVA to make some preliminary parcel delineation before launching the Earth observation monitoring itself, trying to find if the parcel is correct, or for instance, if the farmer has forgotten to split his parcel or to merge it, making the Earth observation monitoring process better after. So this is the content there is in our deliverable. Where to find it? It's not yet fully ready, but it should be available very soon on the NIVA website. I have provided you the link. The target readers, likely the general chapters with the basic knowledge and the general recommendation at the end are for everyone having interest in the topic, and the feedback from experience, it may be more for people who are more expert or more motivated readers, because it's a little bit more difficult reading. So, many thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dominique, for this very interesting presentation tackling many different topics. Are there any questions? Any questions for Dominique? So this is good that this is very good that the deliverables are available on the website. We will, within Sen4CAP, we will certainly look at them. And I have a question regarding the tool for the heterogeneity check. Is this kind of small tool, do you provide the tool in itself, or do you provide the documentation of what you test it in NIVA?
All the tools developed by NIVA are open source, and they are available on there is a public GitLab that should be found by investigating the NIVA website. So normally the tool and its documentation is available on the public GitLab that you can find from the website.
Perfect. Any other questions? Okay, so do not hesitate to use the chat to continue the discussion with Dominique. There are also other persons from NIVA within the participants. And so now I will give the floor to Tor Nielsen from Planet for your presentation, Tor.
Yes, thank you very much. Are you hearing me okay?
We can hear you well, yes.
Wonderful. So let me just click this button here. And you're seeing my screen as well?
Yes.
Beautiful. So yeah, thank you, Sophie, and thank you, Sen4CAP, for inviting me here to come today to present Planet's new product, Fusion. So my name is Tor, obviously here representing Planet, and what I will be presenting to you today is the Fusion product, which, as you can see, is PlanetScope harmonized to Sentinel-2. And what harmonization is, I'm going to go a bit more into detail with, and then afterwards we're also going to look at some early results for the checks by monitoring use case. So first, let's take a look at an animation here. So what we are seeing here on the left-hand side is PlanetScope imagery. So I'm sorry it's loading, but I'm sure it's going to come in a second. On a daily basis over Galicia in Spain. And if the animation was running, you would see that we have imagery over Spain, but there are a lot of gaps. There are, here we go, there are clouds, there are different values from the sensors in the PlanetScope constellation. On the right-hand side, we see the Fusion product after that our PlanetScope data has been harmonized to Sentinel-2. And as you can see, there is a full daily coverage over the entire of Galicia in Spain. So let's take a look at how we arrive at this product. So what we are doing here is basically taking the best of both worlds. So you all obviously know Sentinel-2 very well, and this is internationally considered to be a golden standard of optical data quality. Our PlanetScope constellation at Planet consists of about 150 smaller shoebox size satellites that allow us to nearly daily cover globally and at a 3-meter temporal resolution. So there are benefits to both of these constellations, and what we do in Fusion is that we enhance PlanetScope with the radiometry and the data quality of Sentinel-2, and this harmonization process is called CSTEM. And you can see here on the bottom, there is a reference to a peer review article that documents the process. It's a machine learning process there that in a general sense, you could say, takes the pixels of PlanetScope and teaches them the quality of Sentinel-2. And this means basically radiometric and geometric adjustments, atmospheric correction, and cloud and gap removal. So the key specifications of this data is radiometrically Sentinel-2 comparable. It is an analysis-ready data. There's no need for pre-processing and cleaning. It's cloud and gap-free. It has the higher 3-meter spatial resolution that you also can see documented here visually on the right-hand side. And then it's a daily coverage of all EU member states. So let's take a look at this from a time series point of view. So here we have in Limburg, Belgium, April this year, the coverage of Sentinel-2. And we can see in the first half of the month, it seems cloudy. In the second half of the month, there is a decent time series. In comparison, PlanetScope, we still see that the first half of the month there are clouds, but there are some days without clouds that we capture with PlanetScope. If we then look at Fusion, what we get is a daily time series every single day throughout the month with no gaps and with no clouds. So that is when we're enhancing PlanetScope with Sentinel-2. So you might want to ask, Well, how do they get rid of the clouds and how do they fill the gaps? Well, what we see here first is a PlanetScope image, again over Limburg in Belgium, where we have the clouds. And what we do is we apply a cloud mask. This is an algorithm that automatically detects the clouds, and then we fill them out with predicted values. And these predicted values are based on the most recent observations. So if we had a cloud-free image from yesterday or 2 days ago, then it is a decent assumption to assume that the values today are going to be quite similar. So that is how that we arrive at these observations. And here is an animation then again over Limburg throughout the year. Give it a second to load, where we can see how the evolution of what is happening on the individual parcels, they develop over the year. 1 second, I'm sure it's going to be there. Yes, so while we're waiting, this of course allows you with the added 3-meter resolution to address some of the inconclusive cases that we know that come from Sentinel when Sentinel-2 when it goes through the checks by monitoring process, those are some of the cases that we want to look closer at. So I'm sorry that this isn't running right here at this moment. I'm just going to try to do like this and see if that helps. If not, then I think you get the idea from some of the other visuals I've shared. And I want to go to the next slide. Obviously, when you create data by running something through a machine learning process, you want to make sure that it's validated and it really matches what is going on the ground. And what we've done here is we've compared it against arable mark spectrometers. These spectrometers are placed in the field and collecting on the ground in situ data, the actual truth about what's going on in the phenology of the plants. And we can see on the graph that the in situ data blue matches very well with the red points from fusion, confirming that in fact this data process is mirroring exactly what's going on the ground. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at some of the initial tests and pilots and use cases that we have with Fusion, with paying agencies on the use case of checks by monitoring. First, let's look at small parcels in Austria. And this here is a pilot that we've been doing through the summer together with the Austrian paying agency Agramat, EOX, in the context of the EU Widget project. And you might remember that EU Widget, they did a presentation here at Sen4CAP a few months ago. It's an open value chain of data as a service. So what they're doing for Agramat here is a custom-made solution based on the markers with a platform and expert judgment app. And we've tested then our data in this context against Sentinel-2. Austria has the challenge of having nearly 900,000 small parcels that cannot be monitored by Sentinel-2. The definition of a small parcel in this pilot is that is when a parcel is too small to fit 8 Sentinel-2 pixels inside the parcel polygon, including a 5-meter buffer and less than 60% pixel loss. Other paying agencies might have other definitions of a small parcels. The EU Widget project can adapt to that, but this is how we did it in this pilot, where we then on a representative sample of some 30,000 parcels compared Fusion data to the ground truth we had from 2020. The results on a crop classification markers can be seen here in this table. And what we're looking at are the F1 scores. You might know the F1 score is a measure of crop classification accuracy that takes into account both the robustness and the precision. Blue is Sentinel-1 and 2 combined. Orange is Planet Fusion. And if we look all the way at the left-hand side, we can see the overall accuracy, where the Sentinels, they are about 50%, and Planet Fusion is nearly 70%, so that's a 15 to 20% increase over the small parcels on average. If you look then on the crops in particular, we can see generally Planet Fusion performs better than Sentinel-1 and 2 over these small parcels, sometimes with a large margin and sometimes with a smaller margin. And then there are a few use cases where neither Sentinel nor Planet Fusion performs very well, and maybe Sentinel performs a little bit better in those cases. So the outcome of this is that Akamat in Austria sees a potential in a solution when it comes to crop classification with the use of Fusion. And let's take another example. This season, the Slovenian paying agency, together with Synergize, are using Fusion operationally for checks by monitoring. And this is both in the automated part and also in the expert judgment part. Similarly, Slovenia, they have a problem with smaller narrow parcels. They have around 190,000 smaller narrow parcels that cannot be processed by Sentinel-2. If we look on the right-hand side, there is an example of a narrow parcel, and the red box is an example of a Sentinel-2 pixel that doesn't fit into the polygon. So halfway through the season, now we have the results in this table on the basic payment scheme, where we can see on the different crop types how that our Fusion data was able to assess for compliance and assign the different traffic lights, green and yellow. Having said, of course, it's mid-season, the inconclusive yellow here is expected to go down as the farmers, they still need to perform some activities on the land. So at the end of the season, the results are going to look different, but the Slovenian paying agency is very happy that they're finally able to find a solution for these 190,000 parcels where they don't have to engage with the farmer or in other ways do a manual workflow. But also for the expert judgment part of expert monitoring in Slovenia, Fusion data plays a role. What we see here is an orchard example. An orchard in Slovenia need to mow the land. And here, looking at this time series of Sentinel-2 data, there is one image that kind of shows a bit of a discoloration, but this is not enough to confidently say whether or not visually that a mowing event has taken place. But if we then look at the Planet Fusion time series, we could see in the second half or in the bottom line that there is a clear discoloration, green towards kind of more gray and earth color, and that is sufficient information for the paying agency to confidently say, hey, a mowing event has taken place, and then they don't need to inconvene the farmer requesting geotag photos or having to do a rapid field visit or something similar. So these are early results. We are obviously in ongoing projects around EU, and we're very happy if someone else is interested in taking a look at the Fusion data and testing it on some of their use cases. We'll be happy to learn more. And on that note, I thank you all for listening, and thank you for inviting us here today. And as I said, if anyone wants to learn more, please do get in touch. I'm very happy to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tor, for this very interesting presentation. We know that the planet data are often at the core of our discussions. Are there any questions for you? There are. Let's move to the chat.
Yeah, please, if you can read them out loud.
Yeah, sure. There is a question. Is it a problem if daily data is an assumption? And I wonder how much agricultural area does the comparison in 2019 cover?
Okay, so the comparison in 2019, I'm not sure I understand the question. Is this the in situ validation that I presented? So I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly what the question was.
Yeah, but maybe the first part of the question was about the fact that you are assuming having daily data, and so that during your gap filling, is it a problem to have done such strong assumption of getting a daily frequency?
Well, so this is the way the system process works. It generates daily data, right? So of course you don't have to use daily data. You know, this is just the way that our data product works. You can do it weekly or every 5 days. I think JRC says every 5 days is sufficient for the markers, right? So, but this is just the way the product comes, and you can modify it and implement it according to your preferences, of course.
Thank you. There is another question for you. What is the cloud mask you are using?
So to my recollection, it is a combination of the Sentinel-2 and the Modis cloud mask. But it is an algorithm, and there are some variables that we are fine-tuning to make it as precise as possible. But a combination of Sentinel-2 and Modis is the one that is described in the system algorithm.
We have still another question coming back to the daily data. So what is the algorithm you have behind this daily data generation? How do you manage to get this data?
Well, so if I go back in the presentation here where we have the calendar view, right? So you can see this data, Sentinel-2, combined with this data. This is already quite a lot of data, right? So for the PlanetScope constellation, we have a very generous coverage over EU. This is from Limburg, right? So we already have near daily data. So the gaps and the clouds that I've built is just a small part of it, really. The majority of this is real observations.
Okay. And maybe the last one, and then we will continue at the end for those who want to continue. So coming back to the comparison with 2019, yes, the Fihat Kahoglu was talking about the comparison between the in-situ data and the fusion. So how much virtual area does it cover? Is it just 1 pixel, or is it an average, or?
Yeah, so I mean, that is a good question. I don't know how large of an area it is exactly, right? But what I can add to that is that beyond this in situ validation, the results that we've seen, I mentioned from Austria and Slovenia, you know, are also validating the ground truth. So we've, you know, we have run this against, you know, what is known in terms of declarations of activities and fields and so forth, and we can see that it matches. I would assume that when you do an arable mark spectrometer, that you're probably doing it for at least one entire field.
Okay, thank you. So there are 2 more questions. So, and then we stop. We come back again.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So coming back to the gap fit, you can say the gap filling to get your daily coverage. You are just doing an interpolation. Is it correct if we say so?
So there is an interpolation part in the borders of the cloud mask between the real observation and where the predicted values are. But the real input here is using most recent observations. So what comes into these gaps is based on the data that we have in the recent past. So if we have an image from 1 day ago, 2 days ago, on the basis of that, we can make a decent assumption that what is happening on the field today. So it's a combination of the interpolation and then using the most recent observations.
Okay. And my very last question is about the bands that you can include in the planet fusion. So is it only the planet band, the 4 planet bands, or can you also inverse the model to, let's say,
at the moment,
the Sentinel-2 bands?
We cannot recreate the Sentinel band, but what we have now is 4 bands, RGB and near infrared. And then we have on the product roadmap to expand to 5 and to 8 bands, but we don't have a timeline for that. But our PlanetScope constellation generally in the newer generations of the satellite include more and more bands that are more and more Sentinel-2 comparable. So this of course allows also for application in a high variety of markers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We stop here. One question in the chat, so I invite you to to read and answer there directly. And I will just show the very last slide of the webinar today, and then we will stay online a bit more to continue the question and answers if you want. So we had all these talks. The next steps, the next events that will be proposed within Sen4CAP. So the release of the system version 3, that will finally happen. in October, so you will be informed by email. The next webinar is planned within 2 months, so first week of November. In between, depending on the interactions we have on the forum, we may do a question and answer session on the system version 3. So we will see a bit how the, let's say, release of this version is received by you. So for sure, the system 3, the next webinar, maybe a question and answer session. And if you have other suggestions or questions, we would be happy to answer them. So with that, we officially close the webinar. So we are a bit more than 1 hour, but so thank you very much to all the attendees. I hope that this met your expectations and that you found the different presentations interesting. I thank you very much our 2 presenters, Dominique and Tor. And I propose Dominique, Tor, and the consortium members to remain online a bit more in case there are some questions. Feel free to stay a bit more. And for the other ones, thank you very much and have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so for a great webinar, and thanks for having us again. So I'm still here if anybody else wants to post a question in the chat or ask it out loud.
So for the moment, there are no more questions, but for the other ones, do not hesitate to unmute if you can. If we are becoming a smaller group, this is even easier.
So I also asked this in the chat. Is there anything published with some more technical details on Planet Fusion?
Yes, we have technical documentation. So if I could ask you to just send me an email at tor@planet.com, I can send you a technical document, which is like a 20-page documentation sheet. And I'd